Hi everybody, I hope that this video finds you well. This is day 11 of the contingency plans, and today I'm going to be talking to you about chapter 24 of To Kill a Mockingbird, which is where we had left off. And if you recall, the Friday that we last saw each other on March 13th, I had begun to set you up for reading chapter 24, and I had defined hypocrites for you. And this chapter is all about hypocrites and hypocrisy. And a hypocrite is somebody who says one thing and then actually goes and does the other. And so hypocrites might not even realize that they're being hypocritical. They usually don't. But they're people who are do as I say, not as I do people. And in this chapter, there's a group of women that are the members of a missionary circle in Macomb. They belong to the church, and they have come to the Finch house. Anne Alexandra is hosting. Remember, she's still with the Finches, still living there. And they have come to try to discuss how they can make other people's lives better. And so the subject of their conversation on this particular day is a group of an African tribe known as the Maroonahs. And they speak about, especially, there's Mrs. Merriweather, and she speaks about how this tribe needs their help. And there's a missionary named J. Grimes Everett. And I know this part could get a little confusing, but basically what you have to get out of it is that there's this group of women that are do-gooders, and they are church-going women, very religious, and their goal is to try to improve the lives of other people. And so when they gather in the Finch house, Scout hears them talking about this tribe known as the Maroonahs in Africa and how they need their help, and they're going to do anything that they can to help them. Now, the hypocrisy comes into play when they start to discuss Tom Robinson's case, and they're actually pleased with the verdict. And as you guys know from being in that courtroom, there is absolutely no chance that Tom Robinson raped Mayella Ewell. It is clear that it was Bob Ewell who abused his own daughter. And so they know the truth, but yet they don't seem to care. They're happy with Tom's conviction. And so Scout doesn't necessarily see it because she's such a young child, but we as readers see their hypocrisy that, how can you care so deeply about a tribe of people in Africa that have nothing to do with your daily life, are so far removed from you, but yet you see injustice within your own backyard in Macomb, and no one seems to care. They actually seem to be pleased with the verdict in the case of Tom Robinson. Now, in this chapter, Atticus comes home, and Atticus provides news to Scout and to Calpurnia and to us as to what has happened to Tom Robinson. And I'll just read you from that part. It's on page 315. When Atticus comes in, he asks to speak with Anne Alexandra and Calpurnia in the kitchen. And Anne Alexandra says, "What's the matter?" I'm on the top of 315. And Atticus says, "Tom's dead." And Alexandra put her hands to her mouth. "They shot him," said Atticus. "He was running. It was during their exercise period. They said he just broke into a blind, raving charge at the fence and started climbing over, right in front of them." "Didn't they try to stop him? Didn't they give him any warning?" And Alexandra's voice shook. "Oh, yes, the guards called to him to stop. They fired a few shots in the air, then to kill. They got him just as he went over the fence. They said if he'd had 2 good arms, he'd have made it. He was moving that fast. 17 bullet holes in him. They didn't have to shoot him that much. Cal, I want you to come out with me and help me tell Helen." And Helen is Tom Robinson's wife. So, unfortunately, all of that was for nothing. Atticus was going to try to appeal the case. He felt like they had a good shot, but Tom Robinson is killed trying to escape the prison yard where he's being kept. And so you know that the book is not over yet, but Tom Robinson's story has come to a conclusion here. And you see further the injustice that has occurred to Tom Robinson, a man who clearly committed no crime, and he winds up losing his life. And yet, this group of women, they don't know what's happened to Tom Robinson at this point. Atticus brings Callan and Alexandra into the kitchen to tell them, but you get the feeling that they're not going to give it a second thought. They're not going to care. They were upset after the verdict when their hired help, who were African Americans, were upset. And, one of them even makes the comment about stop sulking, get over it. And so there's very little empathy on the part of these women, yet they parade around as if they are holy, religious women who are doing good for others. Something that if we were together, I would have debated with all of you is, do you believe this story about Tom Robinson? And this is something that always elicits a lot of interesting responses. According to Atticus, he was told that Tom ran for it during his exercise period and he was shot as a result. This is a question, though, that every time I read this book, I always wonder, did Tom really run? Maybe he did. There seems to be evidence that he kind of gave up. It is mentioned on page 314. It's about 5 lines down. Calpurnius said Atticus told her that the day they took Tom to prison, he just gave up hope. So there is that line that suggests maybe Tom really did feel that this was the end and that Atticus would never win the appeal. And so he did run for it. And he figured if he makes it, he escapes. If he doesn't, he has nothing to lose because he's expecting to be executed anyway. On the other side of things, he was shot 17 times. And this is something that readers typically have a problem with. If the guards wanted to stop him, they would have shot him once, maybe in the leg to bring him down. But the fact that he was shot 17 times does seem to imply that there was something deeper. There was anger, there was hatred going on here. He was shot. The guards' intention was to kill him. And so if they made up this story and said that Tom was running and that they shot him to stop him, and no one is going to contradict it because no one's going to believe the prisoners, and the guards can all be in on it. So this is something that I just want to point out to you, that we don't really know for sure. It's something that you have to decide on your own. Did Tom run, or was Tom executed basically by these guards? I just want to take a moment to go over the questions with you for chapter 24. Again, all of the answer keys are on my website under school closure resources by chapter. So the first question for the chapter 24 reading guide is, how do the majority of women who come to visit the Finch house view the verdict in the Robinson trial? And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about how they're hypocrites. They care so deeply about this African tribe, but when the conversation shifts to Tom Robinson, the answer is A, they're pleased with it. They're happy that Tom Robinson has been convicted. Question number 2 asks you for evidence, and there's a couple of lines that you could have pulled. Some that I pulled one of them was on page 310 when Mrs. Merriweather says, it's about 4 paragraphs down. Some people just don't see it my way. If we just let them know we forgive them, that we've forgotten it, then this whole thing will blow over. And so she's referencing the African American population. She feels that they're in need of forgiveness. And so if she was upset with the Tom Robinson verdict, she wouldn't be thinking that the African Americans need forgiveness. On the bottom of that page, there's the line where Mrs. Merriweather talks about how she said to her cook Gertrude that she's not acting like a Christian today. Jesus Christ never went around grumbling and complaining, and it did her good. She took her eyes off that floor and said, "No, Ms. Merriweather, Jesus never went around grumbling." So she's upset that the girl who works for her is upset the day after the verdict, which again implies that these women are not upset with Tom Robinson's conviction. Again, on page 311, if you go into the third paragraph, where Mrs. Merriweather is speaking. She says, "It looks like we're fighting a losing battle. It doesn't matter to him one bit. We can educate him till we're blue in the face. We can try till we drop to make Christians out of him, but there's no lady safe in her bed these nights." Again, referencing the Black community and how there's this distrust of them and how they're not fit to live around. And so that's further proof again that the women are actually very pleased with the Tom Robinson verdict. Question number 3 asks about the news that Atticus brings home during the missionary circle luncheon. And as discussed, the answer is C, that Tom was shot and he was killed trying to escape. And as I said, that's the story that Atticus is told. And just something that I always raise to students: do you believe it? Or do you believe that they just shot him, that he didn't really run? Unfortunately, there's no answer there. It's basically what you think. Question number 4 asks you about how Harper Lee reveals that the women of Maycomb are hypocrites. And so it goes back to what I was saying about how they care so deeply about this African tribe, yet they don't care at all about Tom Robinson. And so there's a lot of lines on the bottom of page 308 when the women are talking about the Marooners. It's the very last paragraph. It says, "Oh, child, those poor Marooners," she said, and was off. Few other questions would be necessary. Mrs. Merriweather's large brown eyes filled with tears when she considered the oppressed. I mean, if that's not hypocrisy, I don't know what is. She's actually crying about this oppressed group of people that live on the other side of the world that she's never even met before. "Living in that jungle with nobody but J. Grimes Everett," she said. "Not a white person'll go near 'em but that saintly J. Grimes Everett." Mrs. Merriweather played her voice like an organ. Every word she said received its full measure. The poverty, the darkness, the immorality. So they feel like this group of people needs help and needs to be saved, and they're Black. But yet, when the subject turns to Tom Robinson, there's no empathy, there's no consideration. They're actually very happy with the results of the trial. So that's really the gist of chapter 24, the hypocrisy of the women of Maycomb, and the fact that, unfortunately, we have lost Tom. He has been killed, whether you think he ran or whether you think they just assassinated him, basically, is up to you. But when the chapter ends, the women have to hold it together, Alexandra and Miss Maudie and Scout, and go back to that group of women now and pretend like nothing has happened. And it's just, for me, always a very sad moment in the book. We know that Tom has a wife. He has 3 children. He did nothing except be kind to Mayella Ewell, and he's lost his life as a result of it. So I hope that clarifies chapter 24 for you.